I have a bone to pick with a Stefan Molyneux video from a few months ago regarding incels, alphas, and the sexual marketplace. A few things that he said has been bothering me, and I want to address them.
And I walked her home and dropped her off with her parents. But before I did, as we were walking home, she said, "Steph, you're gorgeous, but you flirt with everyone." It's like, yeah, well, it's a little true, and unfair, right? And unfair to the average in terms of, like, I was not a high quality person necessarily in terms of, you know, great maturity and so on, but you know, it was unfair. And so what's happened now is, because the high status males don't get taken off the market, what happens is they just continue to date and date and date. And then you get 80% of women chasing the 20% of men. And then how do the women differentiate themselves from the other women? Well, a lot of times what they'll do is they'll provide fairly early and easy sexual access in the hope of, you know, activating the oxytocin or whatever it is, the sort of bonding hormone that happens with men and women during sex, hoping, I suppose, that she can lock down the deal to bag a permanent relationship with the high status male by giving up sexuality.
He claims that some of the fault for the current distorted sexual marketplace lies with the higher status men. He says that the top 20% of earners refuse to settle down. Instead, they play the field, or pump and dump, essentially, which damages the pair bonding ability of women and sends them mixed signals. This results in perpetual bachelorhood for these sought-after men, and the women continue to compete for them, which leads to them not settling for the average man, for the majority of men. Women must escalate their means of competing, eventually using the ultimate weapon to attract a man, sex. Molyneux's premise relies upon the fact that these 80% of women are pursuing a long-term relationship. Can he honestly make that claim? I believe it can be proven that most Western women who lie in the 18 to 35 age range are more interested in careers, partying, their phones, and hooking up. This can be proven by the prolific amount of young women in university, the near parity with men of women in the workforce, and the decline in marriage, not to mention single motherhood. In regards to the top 20% of men being at fault for the dysfunction of the sexual marketplace, it is categorically false, and I will use his words to prove it so.
And it seems weird to even have to say this, but men propose and women dispose. Men ask if they can date, if they can get married, and women say yes or no. Women are in the position of saying yes or no. Women are the ones choosing the men.
In other words, women control sexual access. Men are biologically disposed to have as much sex as they can attain. And you'll fault this for men? Moreover, women have the responsibility to choose a man who suits her purposes. If she indeed wants a long-term partner, she knows to withhold sex until she discovers his true intentions. If she fails to, then that is her fault. If the man chooses to sleep around, that is his prerogative. Let us say that Molyneux's hypothesis is correct, ignoring biology and women's free will. What incentive do the top male earners have to marry these women? It can't be the biased family courts that confiscate the wealth and children from men. It also can't be the deference that society holds for women that leads to imprisonment of men for false allegations of sexual assault and harassment. Lastly, Molyneux's premise forgets the bad boy loser types, the indolent, the unemployed dopamine chasers. They use women for sex just as much or more than the top 20% of male earners. They are more of a monkey wrench in the sexual marketplace than the top men. Again, if Molyneux's premise is carried out, then what makes him think that these women are marriage material for anyone?
When women used to enforce the no sex rule, then women competed on the grounds for high-value males. They competed on the grounds of being nice, being positive, being great conversationalists, being smart, being, you know, well-read, being cultured, you know, knowing how to play piano, whatever it is, right? I mean, being a good homemaker, and, you know, if you wanted to be professional, that certainly was fine, and if that's what the man wanted, there was no issue with that. And so women could compete in the absence of easy sexual access to women. Women competed on the grounds of equality of character rather than access to vagina. And moving sexual market value from quality of character to access to sexuality has trivialized and really trashed the dating game in the West, which is why, and of course, it's allowed women to become a lot more mean, a lot more coarse. Like the language that, I mean, I see this on Twitter, right? The language that comes out of women, the coarseness, the crass sexual references, the constant threats of withholding, for me at least, unwanted sexual access. I mean, it's very, very coarse.
He's putting the cart before the horse. The current sexual marketplace did not produce these promiscuous women. Promiscuous women produced this sexual marketplace. Women would not magically revert back to the conservative, piano-playing, respectful women of the 19th century if men magically began to place rings on their fingers. Again, it's not the top 20% of men that are eschewing marriage that is creating the dysfunction. It's entitled, egotistical, spoiled, licentious women who are.
A lot of women are chasing a small number of guys, which actually has created, in terms of dating, sexuality, a real patriarchy, in that men control access now. And that is really a kind of disaster for women. And what it's done, of course, is it has promoted this promiscuity among women because it's really, really hard to compete.
Again, men propose, women dispose. Women have always been atop the hierarchy of sexuality. Thus, if the sexual market becomes skewed, then it must be the behavior of women that has changed. The following is my hypothesis. In the late 50s, early 60s, society started to disregard the teachings and authority of good family men. Society became more feminine. The sexual marketplace rules that have been in place for a few centuries, at least in the US, were disregarded and women's hypergamy ran rampant. Women began to make bad choices in whom they slept with. They rewarded the worst men the most valued prize a woman could give a man, sex. Unwanted and unplanned children were then born into broken homes and dysfunction. They were raised by inadequate, sometimes violent fathers, or they were raised by single moms. The children grew into dysfunctional adults in an ever-growing dysfunctional world. The cycle repeated until modern day. Foundationally, it is fatherlessness that leads to women's promiscuity and ability to choose a good man. Women were better off having their fathers have a large choice in their future partner because the father had a vested interest in the future of his daughter. He did not want to take on the financial burden that could come from a result of her hypergamy. Moreover, the father could make a rational assessment of a suitor, an ability a woman is less likely to possess because of her hypergamy and emotional lability. He could make a coherent choice or at least lead her into the right direction, encouraging her to choose a certain suitable man for marriage. And this was my take on it. It's a quick video. I just want to put it out there. Feel free to respond to my criticisms of Stefan in the comments below. Please leave a like. Please subscribe. And I'll see you in the next video.